All right, you just heard Sapphire's take on the Golden Triangle region. Now, I guess we'll give you our take. I mean, that's kind of why we're here, is to give you our take and our opinions.
That is what we do around these parts.
Here on the Golden Triangle
We got
region.
opinions.
We got pinions. We got apostrophe pinions here. And you're going to love them all, as one does. There are 32 total teams in the Golden Triangle region. Only 5 are ranked, but dang, those 5 teams.
They're going to make some statewide
They're going to
noise.
make some big statements here. Let's go ahead and start off with 5A Division 1. You got number 6 Port Arthur Memorial. Had a massive win over Port Neches Groves last week, taking care of them 50-15. And like Sapphire said, I think a lot of them over there picked Port Neches Groves to win that game. I don't even think they picked Port Arthur Memorial, but man, yeah, they made some noise. They made a definite statement last week.
Oh, they absolutely did. And I mean, it was one of those things to pick PNG and expect this game to pick PNG. I don't think anyone batted an eye at that.
Yeah.
To pick Port Arthur, maybe a couple bat eyes, but not too terribly bad. For them to go out there and beat PNG 50-15, I mean, there was a really good clump of shockers in week 1. That was this. And I don't think it's the fact that they won. I think it's the fashion that they won in and what they were able to do. But when I say that Brian Morgan's squad looked unbelievably impressive last week, they absolutely deserve to get bumped up to number 6 in our rankings this week.
Definitely. Moving on down to 4A Division 1. We just talked about them. They're going to be a powerhouse down there. Number 7, Little Cypress Mauriceville, the Bears. They shut out Hardin Jefferson last week, 35-0.
It was insane. And I mentioned it earlier, but I really want to go back and refresh anybody's mind. In 2020, I mean, LCM was a 1-7 team.
Right.
Now, obviously 1-7, they only played 8 games. Part of that was because it was 2020. But I mean, you go back before then in 2018, 4-7. In 2019, 6-4.
They were just kind of average.
To go from 1-7, regardless of the circumstance of 2020, to 11-3. I mean, this was a team that went out and won a playoff game.
Right.
A couple of them.
Right.
And it speaks wonders to what Coach Peavy was doing out there. And I am very interested to see how LCM reacts to this because, like I mentioned when we were talking to Sapphire, this is taking a team that was completely under the radar and caught everyone off guard to now people are watching LCM's film and going, hey, guys, this is a legitimate test that we're up against. So it'll be very interesting to see. But still, what he did last year was absurd.
Yep. No doubt about that. Let's move on to 4A Division 2, the gauntlet of a district. You've got number 4 in West Orange Stark, and you've got number 9 in Silsbee. And we'll talk more about this district later on in the show. But that's the mitochondria of a district.
Yes.
Man, that is a powerhouse district, and we'll talk more about it later, but the next 2 teams following West Orange Stark and Silsbee in that district, they're really good too. So that district as a whole is just a really scary district.
It really is. And hang on, sorry, I was looking something up real fast. We talked about it. Oh, yeah, the Silsbee win last week was incredibly impressive, too, because that was a Viter squad that we felt like, well, step 1, I mean, has said multiple times, that was kind of he thought a team that was going to be pretty darn good. They absolutely just destroyed Viter. 48-7. There were some tweets sent off about that game that were interesting, but it was funny. But man, I mean, that's just one of those things that we knew that Silsbee was going to be good. We know that West Orange Stark is always good, but Silsbee looking like a team that's going to be climbing up the ladder and something to really find out about. But yeah, in one classification, when you have 2 top 10 teams in one district, that is tasty.
Right. And like Sapphire said earlier, West Orange Stark shutting out Nederland 32-0 last week.
All right.
Yeah, seriously. I would not want to be in that district. No, thank you. No, thank you. And lastly, moving on down to 3A Division 2, you've got number 3 Newton. Now, I looked up who they beat last week, and I can't pronounce it. It's I think Anahuac or something.
Oh, Anahuac.
Anahuac. Okay, so the H is kind of silent.
Yep.
So they beat Anahuac 30-14.
Anahuac.
Yeah. You know me. If I haven't made anything clear enough on the show, it's that I can't pronounce anything.
I'm honestly. They're gonna
second
yell
guessing
at
yourself?
us. No,
I know.
No, I honestly think it's Anahuac.
Anahuac. Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? That actually does sound kind of familiar. So Anahuac, yeah, Newton beat Anahuac 30-14 last week. Not really a surprise, and I can see Newton making a pretty deep playoff run.
Yeah,
honestly.
they're definitely going to be favored. They're obviously favored in that district, but the two back-to-back games. Well, there's a bye week in between, but week 3 they play Jasper, and then week 5 they play Westward Shark. Those are obviously they're punching up, but that'll be a huge test getting them ready for district. Really, that to them is playoff prep.
Yep.
Because I don't think that they're. I mean, New Waverly is pretty good. Anderson Shiro has been fairly decent in the last couple of years, so those will challenge them a little bit. But I don't see any reason that Newton shouldn't pull through in District 12-3 Division 2 there.
They've got a star-studded roster too. We'll talk about them more in a second here, but yeah, that roster's stacked. I wouldn't be surprised if they made some noise come playoff time. So there you go. There's the the current ranked
We are
teams.
in season.
We're in
boy.
season. I still can't wrap my head around that, man. I'm tired. I can't wrap my head around it. But there you go. There's the ranked teams of the Golden Triangle region. Only 5 out of 32. Very impressive. 2 of which coming from the same exact district. So, yeah, that's pretty impressive. All right, let's go ahead and move on to one of my favorite segments that we do here. Some players to watch in the Golden Triangle region.
There are no shortages.
No shortage of talent whatsoever. I want to go ahead and start off with Port Arthur Memorial defensive back Davion Isles. And this Port Arthur Memorial team is going to pride themselves mainly on their defense and specifically on their secondary. Isles, of course, leading the way there at safety. He's 6 foot, 180 pounds, and lightning fast. Had 3 interceptions on the season last year. He holds an offer from Incarnate Word. Probably, he's got a lot of FCS attention. I think it's just probably his size and his build is probably holding him back from any of those higher offers. But he's also kind of young too, so definitely some eyes going to be on him more as the season rolls on there.
Yeah, they list him as a 4.5, and I think he's a legitimate 4.5. This kid has speed on him.
Definitely. Moving on, we've got Port Neches Grove's quarterback Cole Crippen. He put up an eye-opening stat line last season as kind of a first-year starter. 3,020 passing yards, throwing at a 62% completion rate, 35 touchdown passes. That seems pretty good to me. The thing that I noticed most about him is that he's a real quick decision maker. And a lot of the huddle tapes that I watched from him, just, studying him and learning more about him, he's got to be pretty quick just because I don't think that offensive line can hold very well.
Yeah.
I mean, that pocket collapses pretty quick, so he's got to be a quick decision maker. But, man, he does a great job of it, too.
Yeah, they really only had one. I think he's a senior offensive lineman returning after that. I mean, they're relying on some sophomore talent there. I think they might even have a freshman over there. So that is definitely a rebuild when you're looking at P&G, which obviously showed heavy last week. But if that offensive line can start to step it up a little bit, I think that they'll have a lot better shot because they've got some weapons on the outside.
He can sling it. Yeah,
he can sling it, and he's got 2 different receivers that really make a threat. But it's going to be on that offensive line. Cole Crippen, though, he's a very good player, and he's very alert is I think the best way to describe him.
Yes. And this was also worth mentioning. Port Arthur Memorial did play Port Neches Groves last week, and Davion Isles did pick off Cole Crippen in the 4th quarter, turned it into a pick 6, so good for him. But yeah, real talent there. Let's move on down the list to Little Cypress Mauriceville running back and cornerback Demarion Morris. And dude, this dude is basically Superman, and I can't convince you otherwise. He does everything. He ran for over 1,800 yards and scored 21 touchdowns on the season last year. The thing that makes him so special just at the running back position is that he's able to adjust really well to this situation. Like, if the play falls apart, he's able to scrap something together and basically make something out of absolutely nothing. He's super quick, super agile. And on the defensive side, he picked off 6 passes last season. He's just an absolute ball hawk, and he just does it all for the Bears.
He is, and when he came in this year, he's listed at 5'10", 180. I think he's got the stature to be able to put on a little more weight, which obviously that's really good size for a cornerback. When you're talking about on the defensive side of the ball, I think he's the perfect size for that. The thing that shocked everyone last year was how well he did at running back, because he is a little bit of a smaller guy, especially when you're playing down there. I mean, these are some big old dudes down in the Golden Triangle. So he was the catalyst that pushed them to that regional final last year.
Definitely. Let's talk about the man of the hour, Silsbee wide receiver Drelon Miller. And man, talk about a season debut. Miller had one hell of a game last week against Viter. 4 catches for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. And man, that's just in the first half. And I didn't watch that full game, but it's probably just because they pulled him at half. They were like, "Yeah, man, we're already up. Like,
how about you take a breather?
we're gonna save your star talent for later on in the season." But our buddy over at Nick Harris over at Rivals.
Our buddy over at Nick Harris.
I think I have like what is the?
Where you flip the dyslexia?
Yeah, I think I got that, but he put out an article that said literally since midnight, he's heard from a plethora of major Division I programs, including Auburn, Baylor, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Houston, Oklahoma, Duke, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Michigan State, TCU, Alabama, and Stanford.
Man, all it takes is that one, just one.
That one good game that you get on tape, and man, that stat line, though, it's very deserving. He's on track to be, I think, one of the best receivers in the class of 2024.
Absolutely. Well, and it's another one of those things where you look at it and say, he's not going anywhere. This wasn't just a one-time game that he had a really good game. He was clearly the best player on the field.
Mm-hmm. It's not going away.
That's not going to change.
No, absolutely not. We mentioned it earlier. Newton's got a star-studded roster, 2 of them on this list. But let's begin with Newton athlete Leighton Foster. He's on our 3A preseason All-State team. He's listed 6'2", 205 pounds. And, man, this dude really does it all. He had 165 total tackles and 12 offensive touchdowns last season, earning district MVP honors. And he's got a couple of offers. He's got some from Lamar, Louisiana Monroe, Tarleton McNeese State, and Houston Baptist. Really, really, really does it all for this Newton team. And a team like Newton can use a guy that can play really, really well in different positions.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And it's just one of the things you get down into that 3A Division II classification. You're playing with smaller guys. You're playing with people that play on both sides of the field. And obviously I think that's what makes him so dynamic. I would say that his defensive front is exactly where he fits in the best, but it's still a weapon on the offensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm.
The other star-studded guy on their roster, Newton offensive lineman Ethan Lott, also on our 3A preseason All-State team. How about that? Both of them on our preseason All-State team in Class 3A.
6'4", 280.
Yeah, I mean, he's huge for a 3A school.
You want to talk about...
That's huge for any school.
Yeah, if they're smart, they put him as the first person to walk off the bus so people see him and go, that is a man-child.
Yep. That dude just anchors the offensive line and just bullies guys up front. He also has a couple of offers, Houston Baptist, Missouri State, Northwestern State, and then also the University of Houston is looking at him. I don't think they've offered him, but yeah, he's slowly climbing up that ranking there. But yeah, that Newton team is stacked.
Considering they're moving to the they're moving to the Big 12.
Yeah, they could use that dude. Yeah, 6'4", 280 again.
6'4", 280 is about what you're looking for there.
And he's only going to put on more weight as the season goes on. So yeah, if you're Newton, you're stacked. Moving on down to Combs Neal. Is that how you say it?
Combs Neal.
Offensive lineman and defensive lineman Dylan Fowler. He's going to be a huge part in the trenches on both sides of the ball this season. 80 tackles last season, 19 of those were a tackle for loss, and he actually played a huge role in the Bulldogs' win last week over West Hardin. So when you got a big dude like that plays both offensive line and defensive line, you're pretty set.
Yeah, and you know that he is big athletic and not just big Because when you're playing both, man, when you're playing in the trenches on both sides of the ball, that is a grueling feat to be able to do there.
Right. Well, and I feel like too, especially as you move down the classifications to like the 2A and the 1A level, you kind of just find anybody who's big and stick them on the offensive line. But you got to be pretty athletic to also play defensive line too. So when you got a guy that can do both, when you see he's listed as an offensive and a defensive lineman, you got to know he probably puts up pretty big numbers, and he's pretty big athletically. And to round it all out, we have Burkeville quarterback Brandon Lewis. And if you remember from last realignment, Burkeville dropped down from 2A Division II to 6-man football, 1A Division I. So they're basically going to have to relearn the whole game of football. They'll actually play their first game against Union Hill this week, so we'll learn more about that team then. But I think what this team has on their side especially is they've got depth. When you're moving from 2A school to where it's a little bit bigger than most of these 1A schools, you're going to have a lot of depth at each position. Lewis is our District 15 1A Division I preseason offensive MVP. This team's, like I said, used to playing at a higher classification, so we're going to expect them to do well with Brandon Lewis leading the way at quarterback.
No doubt.
So there you go. That was a mouthful. Those are your players to watch in the Golden Triangle region. A lot of talent down there. That's going to be a really, really fun. Definitely keep your eye on some of those players. They're going to be probably some big-time stars playing at the next level for sure. All right, Pickle, to round it all out here for the Golden Triangle region, let's go ahead and talk about some storylines. And right down there, you see it. We've talked about them this whole time. District 9 4A Division II is the mitochondria. And if that word
the powerhouse of the cell.
Yes.
Science.
I was going to say, if that word is new to you, just dig deep down in your depths of your brain and think back to science class. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, which is exactly what District 9 4A Division II is to this region. You've got 2 ranked teams, and we've already talked about it. It's impressive enough to have 1 ranked team in a single district, but when you have 2 ranked teams in a single district, that's really deadly. And of course, we've already talked about West Orange Stark. They rank number 4 in District 9 4A, well, just in 4A in general, but they are ranked number 4. And we already talked about it, but West Orange Stark's schedule is a gauntlet. Of a schedule. They're playing 3 ranked teams. Now, of course, they're going to be playing down classification 1, classification 2 Newton, but they're still a ranked team. Like, they're still going to give them a little bit of trouble, They bring back 8 starters on both sides of the ball, and they did make a lot of noise last year in the playoffs, but they did lose to China Spring in the regional finals. Last year. So, really good team in that district. Also, we've got... Did you want to say anything?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just going to move on to number 9, Silsby. They're also in that district. I've already talked about them. They've got a lot of star-studded talent. Typically, really not a team to keep your eye on, but they've done really, really well in these years past. Lott returning at the skill position. And, of course, they got that real rising star in Drelon Miller. So, there's your 2 ranked teams in the district. Now let's move on to your 2 non-ranked teams. They're not ranked, like I just said, but they're still pretty dang good. Also, those 2 teams will match up in Week 5. So if you're looking to go to a game during Week 5, that's maybe one to keep on your radar. You also have Jasper in that district. I think we had them preseason ranked number 3 just in that district. They're really, really good. They're always kind of towards the top of the district, but how do you compete with 2 ranked teams at the top of your, how do you win a district like that when you're already
No, Jasper's one of those teams that they are always a contender, and that's a gauntlet of a district there. Right. And really, you take a look at that, you have Jasper, you've got Hampshire Frenette has been really good.
I think they're number 4. We have them ranked number 4 in that district right there, but when you just take a look at that district, it's just going to be week after week after week, just a struggle to win each of those games. So, yeah, as a whole, that district is definitely the mitochondria of that region.
Powerhouse of the cell.
As a whole, yes. Mitochondria,
Science.
powerhouse of the cell. So there you go. There is your district to watch. And again, week 5, go to that game. It's going to be really good, I bet.
Yeah, and that, really leads in great to the next one.
It really does. And next, we're going to kind of talk about the road to the state and if any teams out of that region has a chance to make some noise in the playoffs and maybe even get to AT&T Stadium in December. And I think that there definitely is a chance for at least one of those teams to make a deep playoff run. But like we were talking about earlier, the road actually to the playoffs for most of these teams is going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, you look at Region 3 in either 4A Division 1 or 4A Division 2, and it's difficult. Like, if that's falling under your radar, start paying attention to Region 3 out there, because we've talked about it, and I think that everyone can agree that the 2 teams that have the most likely chance to make it farther in the playoffs is West Orange Stark. Obviously, you can do what you will with Silsbee. I still think West Orange Stark has the better chance to finish top of that 9-4A Division 2. But you look at that, and then you look at LCM. But when you want to take a look at 4A Division 2, when you're talking about Region 3, not only you've got Belleville and Lamarck, Sweeney in District 10. And then you've got in District 12, Cuero. Did you see what they're doing to El Campo last week? That was impressive. I think LaGrange is a really good team, so I think that's a very, very difficult road through that. And then when you move over to 4A Division 1, again in Region 3, this one is very interesting because LCM is in District 10. Now, they've got Splendora. That's fine. We kind of have a little bit of an answer on what Vider is, but not 100%. We've talked a lot about that. Huffman-Hargrave is typically pretty good. District 9 in Region 3, that's where the gauntlet really starts when you're talking about 4A Division 1, because you've got Chapel Hill, you've got Lindale, Kilgore, Jacksonville, Henderson, Athens, we've been told is pretty up this year. And then you go down to District 12, El Campo needs no introduction. They have Ruben Owens. Did not look super great last week. I'm going to have to see what happens there. But the other team that I want to keep an eye on here, and one that I think is definitely going under people's radar, is Bay City. Bay City, the Black Cats. They 68-0 over Sweeney. 68-0. Now, maybe that says Sweeney's really down.
Yeah.
But Bay City, to drop 68
I was going to say, any
on
team
a team
that drops that much on a single team, like, you've got to have some kind of talent there. Like, if Bay City, I'm getting a
Bay
mix
City
of,
Black Cats.
Exactly. If Bay City were just, like, a normal kind of, like, in the middle here kind of team, they'd maybe drop 30 on them. Not 68.
68, and that was with 3 blocked punts, a score in all 3 phases of the game. There was there's just a ton of depth at the and speed at the skill positions. Bay City's a team to watch out for. So either of those, any of those Region 3s that you look at in the 4A classifications, it's one of those things. They are very, very viable contenders when you take a look at what the Golden Triangle has to offer in these regions. But man, it will be a test week in and week out.
Right.
There's not just, if they can make it through this difficult district, then they likely should win the region. It's, no, man, you've got to win your district, and you've got to go out there for 4 different weeks of the playoffs to even try and win this region, because it is going to be a test every single week. So, is it possible? Yes.
Yes.
You buckle up.
Right.
Because the Golden Triangle is going to have to fight their way through that.
Right. Yeah, and
they've got the people to do it.
Right. And I love doing these segments too, because when you talk about what these teams have to go through, especially when you look back to the state champions last year, like China Spring, going undefeated, right? The teams that they had to get through to become undefeated and state champions.
Oh, yeah.
It's absurd. It just gives you a deeper appreciation for Texas high school football, in which we love so much. So there you go. There's our take on the Golden Triangle region.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.